And to tell us more about this, co-director of Yonsei MIT project on climate change and economy, Kwangyul joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so currently you're co-leading the Yonsei MIT project on climate change and economy. Tell us more about this project.
Well, we are trying to find out exact causality behind the climate change, which are primarily economic related. For example, the jacket that you are wearing, the jacket that I am wearing, to produce 1 kilogram of garment, it involves 23 kilograms of carbon dioxide emission.
Wow.
If you go for, say, bulgogi or galbi tonight, 1 kilograms of beef will involve 30 kilograms of carbon dioxide. That's because we are burning fossil fuels to create this particular energy. When this carbon comes out and goes around the Earth, it captures the heat from solar energy. That is, when the sun energy comes to planet Earth, it comes in the form of photons. But when it leaves, or deflected or reflected, it comes out or goes out in the form of infrared. But should there be carbon dioxide, CH4, methane, or SF6, these global house gases, they capture, they trap this heat, which causes the global change, global warming and climate change.
All right. Well, I know you just mentioned a lot of things about climate change and how you're potentially trying to deal with that through your project. But also, we've been hearing this term, climate finance. Now, can you tell us more about this and how it's used to mitigate climate change?
Let's say you want to create 1 joule of energy. There are ways of doing this. Let's say we are going to use coal, which is cheaper, and say $100 to produce 1 joule of energy from coal. But if you use solar or wind, it'll probably be $200 or $300. There's a price difference, which is why we are opting for the cheaper, seemingly cheaper energy. But we don't know the full cost of coal. We do know that there's particulate matter, so we have to go to hospital, we miss work. But more than anything else, there's a cost of global climate change. So what we are trying to do is trying to capture the intrinsic real cost of fossil fuel. So should we be able to calculate this particular amount and impose the penalty upon the fossil fuel in the form of carbon tax, in the form of emission trading, then we'll find a real price so that the fossil fuel will be more expensive than the non-fossil fuel. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find out quantitatively the actual cost of fossil fuel, of climate change.
Now, Korea also launched an emissions trading scheme in 2015, and we're hearing that other countries are using this as a new form of an economic weapon to fight against climate change. Can you tell us more about this?
It works like this. Let's say there's company A, B, C. It costs $100 for company A to reduce 1 ton of carbon emission. Say 10 for company B, and $1 for company C. Each has a so-called different marginal cost.
Right.
So the government comes along and say, you all reduce 1 ton. Then total social cost would be 100 plus 10 plus $1, $111. But should we introduce emission trading scheme in such a way that they can trade emission rights with each other? Seemingly, company A, at the cost of 100, will go to company C and buy that $1, and company will go and buy that $1 again. As such, the aggregate cost will be $3, which is decisively less than 111. That is the academic interpretation of the whole equation. Does that really work in the real world? We are not sure.
Okay. Well, another term that we're not so familiar with is climate bonds, also known as green bonds. Now, what are they?
There are 2 main vehicles in the climate finance. The first is ETS, emission trading scheme, which is really penalizing or accentuating the negative aspect of the emission. But there's a positive aspect, that is, we know that the green energy, solar or wind, is better and more effective, and in the long run cheaper than the coal. So then it is only right that we apply capital to this particular project in the form of cheaper finance. So there are particular funds, institutions, the environmental groups that raise money for green project only. Then the lending rates or coupon rates tend to be much less than the usual commercial rates, so that we can increase the green projects.
And we're hearing that countries like the US, China, and Japan, and other European countries are using this green bonds and issuing these climate bonds. Now, what are the benefits of issuing these?
They are cheaper, so we can get from fossil to non-fossil in a faster way. We can reconfigure, redefine our industry that would be more suitable under the green scheme. But it goes a bit deeper than that. In 19th century, England was using coal as its own energy source, but it was also using British pound as the trading currency of coal. So they controlled both energy and finance. But in the 20th century, it was the turn of the US. They, as you probably know, the only way for OPEC members to sell oil is using US dollars,
right.
nothing else.
Right.
So the US was controlling the oil supply and US currency, again, energy and finance. Come the 21st century, we were all wondering as to what the most important resource might be. And we all came to a conclusion that it's carbon emission rights. That is because that is the cost of going from fossil to non-fossil. So the European Union came along first and said, we're going to establish this European Union emission trading market, which will determine the price of carbon, but we insist on using euro currency only, so that they can perhaps duplicate what the US did, what Britain did in the last 2 centuries. So it's a far more political, far more confrontational than seemingly might be the case.
Now, kind of going along with that, it kind of makes me wonder, are there any risks related to dealing with climate change through finance?
Yes, as all things are in life, there are risks. It could backfire, it may not be fulfilled. But what we do know is that it is the least bad option so far. We've tried all different options, and at the same time, we know that the climate change, the global warming is economy. It is caused by economic activities. Nobody gets up in the morning and say, I'm going to pollute today.
Right.
They all get up and go to work, and they produce cars, papers, coffee. They all embody carbon emission, and we're trying to reduce it. But why? How? And that's what the climate finance is trying to answer.
Now, what are some of the ways then that Korea can raise awareness about climate change and also use this climate finance more effectively?
Korea is probably at the very top of the scale in terms of awareness.
Okay.
That's why we were able to introduce ETS a few years ago that nobody else did.
In East Asia, right?
In East Asia. But at the same time, we often talk about Korea or Seoul being the center of finance, the former, not the last two somewhat ineffective governments, but the government by the Roh Moo-hyun tried to establish Korea and Seoul as a finance center. That's a bit difficult. It's a bit of a obstacle. You can't really move funds from New York to Seoul or Hong Kong to Seoul. But we do have an angle here because Green Climate Fund, the global body that looks after the whole thing, is in Songdo, Incheon.
Okay.
So it is in Korea, and we are one of the first to introduce ETS in the world at the national level. You see, what is happening in Europe is at the transnational level. It composes all the European countries.
Right.
So there are only 3 countries in the world that are doing this at the national level. That's Korea, New Zealand, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan gave up. It was too difficult. Okay. New Zealand, its economy is really agricultural and not really industry-oriented. So we are the first and probably the most important right now. So we seem to have the right ingredients to take a lead, at least in the field of climate finance.
All right. Well, let's hope to see more of that, more of Korea being in action in that field. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.